Azov is back in Mariupol, 4 years after the siege ended with Ukrainian soldiers in Russian captivity. The unit has returned, not with boots on the ground, not yet, but with something more strategically devastating: a drone network operating 160 kilometers behind Russian lines, systematically destroying every truck, every fuel tanker, every ammunition convoy, trying to supply Russia's hold on Crimea. And what Azov is doing right now is cutting the main artery that keeps Russia's southern occupation zone alive. Between May 6th and May 25th, 2026, the First Corps of Ukraine's National Guard Azov has released footage of reconnaissance and strike drone operations across occupied Mariupol, the H-20 Donetsk corridor, and, most critically, the M14 highway running from Mariupol through Berdyansk to Melitopol and down to Crimea. This isn't reconnaissance for a future offensive. This is an active logistics interdiction campaign, and it's working. On May 21, 2026, the Russian occupation administrator for Kherson Oblast, Vladimir Saldo, signed a decree restricting civilian freight movement on the M14 highway. The road has become too dangerous. Trucks are being destroyed faster than Russia can replace them, and the implications for Russia's entire southern position are catastrophic. The symbolism is extraordinary. Azov made its name defending Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol during the 2022 siege. The battle lasted 82 days. The plant was reduced to rubble. Over 25,000 civilians died in the city. Azov survivors were taken prisoner. Many remain in Russian captivity. The plant has remained under Russian control since May 20, 2022. For 4 years, Azovstal sat as a symbol of Russian dominance, a permanent scar on the map of occupied Ukraine. And now Azov is back, literally flying over its former positions, killing Russian soldiers and destroying Russian supplies. But understanding what Azov is actually doing requires understanding the geography of Russian occupation and the single critical dependency that keeps Russia's entire southern strategy intact. Crimea is an island, not literally, but operationally. Since Ukraine struck the Kerch Bridge in October 2022, destroying the only fixed road-rail crossing connecting Crimea to mainland Russia, the peninsula has been supplied entirely through a single land corridor. That corridor runs from the Russian city of Taganrog on the Sea of Azov, through occupied Mariupol, across the flat Azov steppes through Berdyansk and Melitopol, and finally into Crimea at Henichesk. The highway carrying this traffic is the M14, also known by Russia's occupation name, the R280 Novorossiya Road. It is the only overland route connecting Russia to Crimea, and Azov's drones are systematically destroying it. The scale of the operation is staggering. Open-source analysts have geolocated and confirmed strikes on approximately 50 Russian vehicles in a single recent video montage released by 1st Azov Corps. The strikes target tanker trucks carrying fuel, ammunition boxes, food supplies, and personnel transport vehicles. Multiple attacks are coordinated. Drones maintain visual contact with targets during strikes. Russian air defences, despite being heavily concentrated around Mariupol and Berdyansk, have proven unable to consistently intercept the Ukrainian systems. According to ISW assessment dated May 25th, Azov is now using modified Hornet reconnaissance drones equipped with extended-range communication systems and coupled with larger FP2 attack drones carrying warheads up to 200 kilograms. The operational depth is astonishing. Azov's drone operations are now reaching 160 kilometers behind the Russian lines. That puts them over territory Russia has controlled for over 4 years. That is territory with dense Russian air defense coverage. That is territory where Russian forces have had 4 years to build fortified positions, set up layered anti-aircraft networks, and establish comprehensive electronic warfare systems. And still, Ukrainian drones are operating with apparent impunity. Russian military bloggers have been candid in their panic. Alexei Zhivov, a prominent Russian war correspondent, posted on Telegram on May 24th. An extremely alarming signal. The enemy has begun reaching key logistics arteries. This is not a localized problem. This is systemic. If this continues, supply to the entire southern grouping becomes unsustainable. Vladimir Romanov, another Russian blogger with access to military assessments, wrote, "The Mariupol-Berdyansk section has been struck approximately 160 kilometers from the line of contact. This is a distance Ukrainians could not reach just months ago." The strikes are not random, they are systematic. According to satellite imagery analysis and geolocated video footage, Azov is executing a coordinated campaign targeting specific logistics choke points. The T-0509 Donetsk-Mariupol highway handles supplies flowing north toward the Pokrovsk region. The M14 Mariupol-Berdyansk corridor serves as the primary supply route for operations in Zaporizhia and southern Donbass. The M18 route from Melitopol into Crimea carries the critical supplies sustaining the 18,000 Russian troops occupying the peninsula. And finally, secondary roads in Mariupol itself are under constant surveillance by Azov drone operators. According to statements from the Director General of the Mariupol Drama Theatre on May 14th, Ukrainian drones are heard operating over the city daily, targeting Russian air defense positions. The consequence is not abstract. On May 21st, Vladimir Saldo issued his decree restricting civilian freight on the M14. But civilian freight was already minimal. The real meaning of the decree is this: the road has become so dangerous that Russia cannot even pretend it's safe for civilian use. Fuel is now being rationed in Crimea, according to reports from occupied administration officials. That tells you the severity of the supply disruption. Crimea cannot be self-sufficient. It has no agriculture to feed its occupying garrison. It has no industry capable of sustained military operations. It depends entirely on supplies flowing north through Berdyansk, and those supplies are now being destroyed at the rate of dozens per day. How does this happen? How does a Ukrainian unit operating out of the Donbass front line manage to conduct sophisticated drone operations 160 kilometers behind Russian lines in territory Russia has held and fortified for 4 years? The answer lies in operational lessons Ukraine has learned throughout this war. First, electronic warfare. The 1st Azov Corps operates in coordination with Ukrainian electronic warfare units that conduct continuous jamming of Russian air defense radar and command frequencies. This doesn't mean the jammers shut down every Russian defense. It means they degrade performance. They introduce noise. They create windows of vulnerability in the Russian air defense matrix. And those windows are wide enough for Azov drone operators to exploit. Second, operational depth and distance. Azov operates from positions dozens of kilometers back from the line of contact, in areas where Russian fires cannot reach. Operators maintain visual or satellite-assisted tracking of drone systems flying deep behind enemy lines. Communication is maintained through multiple redundant channels, including satellite systems. If Russia jams one frequency, the drones automatically switch to another. Third, distributed targeting. Azov is not operating in isolation. Multiple Ukrainian formations are now striking the M14 and H-20 corridors. This distributed approach means that Russia cannot concentrate air defences effectively. Defending a single highway running hundreds of kilometres is impossible if strikes are coming from multiple directions, at multiple times, coordinated across a broad area. Fourth, drone design. The modified Hornet systems Azov is using are more manoeuvrable and resilient than earlier Ukrainian drone designs. They carry extended-range fuel tanks, they have improved sensors, they have redundant command systems. Losing a single drone doesn't degrade operational capability significantly because Azov has dozens in operation. The strategic implications are profound. Supply to Crimea is now contingent on navigating a gauntlet of drone fire. Each convoy that makes it through is a success. Each convoy destroyed reduces Russian strategic capability in the south. The calculus is simple. Russia loses strategic capacity faster than it can replace it. Eventually, the bleeding becomes unsustainable. According to ISW assessment, Ukraine's sustained mid-range strike campaign against Russian logistics is, in ISW's language, establishing conditions for future Ukrainian counteroffensives. What that means in plain terms is this. Azov's drone campaign right now is starving Russian troops of ammunition, fuel, and personnel replacements. As those deprivations accumulate, Russian tactical capability degrades. Defensive lines that appeared solid become brittle. When Ukraine eventually launches a coordinated ground offensive supported by this logistics crippling, Russian forces will not have the firepower or mobility to respond effectively. The timeline is instructive. In late 2025, some military analysts believed Ukraine had overinvested in short-range, infantry-supporting drones at the expense of longer-range logistics strikes. Ukrainian planners at the time were accused of neglecting the strategic value of disrupting Russian supply. The first Azov Corps pivot towards sustained middle-range strikes appeared to represent a significant doctrine shift, and the results validate that shift decisively. Azov's campaign has direct historical precedent in the November 2025 counteroffensive that liberated Kupiansk, a major Russian logistics hub in Kharkiv Oblast. That counteroffensive succeeded because Ukrainian forces had spent months degrading Russian logistics in the sector. Ammunition shortages forced Russian commanders to ration fire. Fuel deprivation limited tactical mobility. And when Ukrainian ground forces attacked, Russian defenders lacked the firepower and operational depth to mount an effective response. Kupiansk was liberated in a matter of days. The Crimea corridor is a more complex problem than Kupiansk. The distances are greater, the stakes are higher. But the operational logic is identical. Degrade Russian logistics, accumulate deprivation, exploit the resulting weakness with coordinated operations, and transform a static frontline into a cascading collapse. What makes this moment extraordinary is the symbolism. Azov was synonymous with sacrifice in 2022. The unit's name became shorthand for Ukrainian resistance against impossible odds. The soldiers who survived Azovstal spent years in Russian captivity, many still missing, some still imprisoned. The plant itself remained a haunting symbol of Russian occupation. And now, in May 2026, Azov is back, not yet on the ground reclaiming the city, but in the skies reclaiming operational agency. Every truck destroyed on the M14 highway is Azov, reasserting control over its homeland. Every Russian supply line cut is another step toward actual liberation. But here's the terrible irony. Putin invaded to secure Crimea and prevent NATO expansion. Instead, he created a war that has now saddled Russia with the burden of sustaining an entire peninsula and a sprawling occupation zone through a single, vulnerable land corridor. He created the conditions for his own strategic suffocation. 4 years of war later, the unit he believed he had destroyed is systematically dismantling the logistics network that keeps his entire southern occupation alive. The M14 highway is no longer a supply route, it is a graveyard, and Azov is patrolling it.